game right now. I'll get to his billboard in a minute when Mons brings it in. But let me say hello first. Gary, welcome. How are you?
Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
All right. We're ready for a little college football in this world of upheaval right now. So, we've had teams go down. We've had teams survive. First of all, the U is back. And then let me tell you that Gary's brought to you by the U.S. Army. Join the team that makes a difference. And Mavis Discount Tires. Save on tires at MavisTire.com. Also that he Saturday will be on the call when Kentucky takes on Georgia after Georgia had a tough week. Mississippi State, which almost beat Alabama, took them to a long way, takes on Arkansas. Right. But how about first, let's start with the U. The U put a beating on Notre Dame.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming. I don't know, no one could see that big of a beating coming on. You might have been able to say, I think, Miami can win this game, especially with the success they've had against Notre Dame. But, I think the biggest thing, besides the fact that Mark Richt is building the program back, and the way that atmosphere was down there for that game, you have to anticipate that a lot of young high school football players will see that and get enamored with going back and playing at Miami again, because that was quite a scene. I mean, that was as good a scene as you've seen in Miami in years. And, looking at some of the things I've read, outrated any of Miami Dolphin football this year. So if that could be a hot place to go again, Miami could be back. I don't know if I just don't really know. I've seen them play so many other games this year. I don't think they're to the level that they can make a impact against the top teams. And I know they beat Notre Dame, but I wonder, against the Clemsons, the Alabamas, the top of the food chain, if they're good enough. I will say this, though, on defense, they're fast enough. That is one quick defense.
Very quick, and they've been taking the ball away this year with the chain of takeovers and their whole thing there. Plus, as you said, they're going to be helped by their recruiting, because the one thing, players who go there and go to the NFL, they always go back and they recruit. You got Ed Reed on the sideline. You got all Michael Irvin. These guys will do anything for that program to win. They'll go anywhere to recruit a player.
And it's very similar to what USC was.
Yep.
When it was a happening place to play football there. And, how could you, if you were a young 17, 18-year-old, and Ed Reed is talking to you on the sideline, or Michael Irvin is talking to you on the sideline, I mean, that's very, impressive for a young player, and I could see that happening.
Yep.
I frankly didn't see it happening this year, but, give Mark Richt credit. Incredibly, on that day when Georgia had such a tough football game, the coach that they let go had such a big game in Mark Richt, and ironically, again, is the fact that Mark Richt made a change here at Georgia was because he couldn't win that big game here at Georgia, and at least he's got Miami on the path to their next big game.
Now, everyone wants to put a hole in Wisconsin. Now, this week, people will get to see if Wisconsin at least plays a team that they can gain something from, playing Michigan at home in a big game. Now, Michigan team is not great. We know that, but still they're Michigan, Harbaugh, a win. This is a big quality win if they get it.
It is, and I think that's one of the things last week watching the game with Georgia. I know Georgia has a great tradition and history, a long history of great football, but the current crop of Georgia players have not experienced the rarefied air and the media attention and the social media attention of being at the top of the food chain, being 1, 2, 3, or 4. And, teams like Alabama and Clemson and, Oklahoma are used to that. And their players are used to playing in games when everybody's watching them. Well, now Game Day from ESPN will be there, and it'll be Wisconsin next. It's their big stage because I think now, 2 weeks ago, most of the talking heads in college football were saying that even if Wisconsin wins out, which I frankly thought was silly, but that they would have to struggle to make it in the playoffs, where now everybody knows. Most importantly, the Wisconsin football players know that if they win out, they're going to be in the playoffs. So like Georgia had to experience last year, I don't know if these Wisconsin football players are used to handling a big game against a team like Michigan, or even Auburn is used to it because of their recent history in national championships. So it'll be a quality win if Wisconsin wins this game.
The other thing is the big winner in recent weeks is Clemson. They got themselves back in the mix now.
Yep. Well, I don't know if they were out ever, but you're right. The way things have broken for them, they needed Miami to keep winning. They want to play Miami undefeated. That's their best path. I do believe that Clemson and Miami both control their own fate of getting into the playoffs. There's nothing the committee can do to vote them out if Clemson or Miami wins out. Now, there may be speculation about, a bunch of different upsets, and we can talk about what might happen. Could the loser of that game be in? It would take a lot, and I don't know if I'd be for that, but it could happen. And the other loser, if Alabama lost one of the next two games, could they still be alive? To me, if the chalk holds, that being Oklahoma wins out, either Miami or Clemson wins out, and Wisconsin wins out, the loser in the SEC, whether it be Auburn, Alabama, or Georgia, will be out. Only the winner will be in the playoffs.
Talking with Gary Danielson, as we do about college football each weekend, everyone was to the point where, oh, wow, we're tired of Alabama beating these SEC teams by 50.
Right.
And now the last couple of weeks, they've not struggled. I mean, they beat LSU by 14. No one was happy.
Right.
And then last week, they're in a tie game with Mississippi State, and then they just, come down the field in the last seconds and put the ball in the end zone to win the game. And a game that looked like they were going to win it on a late field goal, and instead they ran into the end zone. But they had their hands full in Mississippi State.
They did, but they showed what Alabama has shown in the past, that they're the most clutch team for the past 9 years. They've been doing this. They've always had a game every year where they've struggled to win. And whether it was Arkansas in the past or a tough game here or there, that they had to pull out and win at LSU a couple times. A.J. McCarron had to do it. Jake Coker had to do it. I remember even Greg McElroy had to pull out a game in his championship a run against Auburn with a 2-minute drive. So this isn't unusual, especially the fact that it does seem that the Alabama players are very clutch. Even the loss to Clemson last year, remember Jalen Hurts scored on that last drive before that defense couldn't hold up. What they faced in that game was a player that's just as clutch in Deshaun Watson. So, I would assume that all of these teams will come to that point where the pressure is going to be on them and the champions make those clutch plays. That's the one thing I think is uncoachable, and it's hard to ever attain. You're either a clutch player or you're not. And Jalen Hurts might be as good a clutch player as I've seen in college football with some of the big names of the past.
Talking with Gary Danielson, let me ask you the question that will be bandied about a lot, and it always is. Is it enough for Nick Saban to be the most prolific college coach since Bear Bryant in terms of what he's done?
Yeah.
Or does he have to go and hunt down that elusive title in the NFL one more time? And I mean, go where he knows where. I know he's told people, and wisely so, he wouldn't go back unless he went to a place where they had the quarterback. Well, the quarterback is sitting in Indianapolis if he's healthy, and Harbaugh sees him there, and there's rumors about that, and then Saban sees him there. Is that enough to attract a Saban to try and take on the big guys, or is he content to have built this kingdom? And he's got a kingdom. Let's be honest. He's going to be the winningest guy since Bear Bryant. I mean, that's what he's going to be. He's going to be the most prolific coach since Bear Bryant. And I don't mean just at Alabama. I mean nationally, the most prolific winner since Bear Bryant. I mean, and he's won. I mean, he's already won what, 4? Is it 4 national titles? I think 4, right? Is it
5? I think.
Oh, 5. Sure. Okay, 5.
Well, I do think it's not going to happen now. 3 or 4 years ago, if you would ask me that question, I would have think he would be intrigued. Nick is 66 years old now.
So you think he's done? You think he's done?
I think what he's doing is worthwhile for him.
Oh, I understand that. I just wondered if he'd be attracted. He doesn't have to do it.
No, I don't think
his
he's gonna do it.
his last stay in the NFL was very unhappy. He was very miserable in his last
stay.
I
don't think
obviously.
he's going to do it. I had a great conversation with Mark Stoops, the head coach of Kentucky game. We're doing the Kentucky-Georgia game this week. And I asked Mark, I said, you took on a job that's not an enviable job. Kentucky football, that's tough in this conference, I said, now, 4.5 years later, do you think it's a harder job or a better job? And Mark said what I believe. He said there are no easy jobs in college football. It's just different expectations. And I think Nick is getting enough out of the pleasure of coaching and building, Alabama, where the expectations on Kentucky might be to get to a bowl game and challenge for the championship every once in a while. The expectations and pressure at Alabama is, you got to win a championship every other year, or it's considered a bad year. So I believe he enjoys what is doing. I believe he sees himself at the precipice of being named, forever if he retires from Alabama. I don't know how big that class is of the best top coaches, but from now on, whatever class size you pick, you have to put Nick Saban's name in there.
You go Rockne, Leahy, Parsegan, add in the guys that come after that, like Bear Bryant. That's it. Yeah.
I mean, you can't name a list and not include him in there, and I think he's going to finish it off in college now. I didn't know about that before, but now I think, he's going to just finish off at Alabama.
And do you think they are easily the best team as far as...
No, I've never thought that. I did not agree with the common thought that Alabama and Georgia was much better than everybody else, and there was a canyon between them and everybody. I thought that was a silly talk. I think Alabama has a very good football team. They have a special player in Jalen Hurts. I think, they've been really rocked with injuries. I was not surprised that Mississippi State gave them a game coming off the physical game they had to play prior to the Mississippi State game. I didn't know if it would be that close, but I figured that Dan Mullen, who's coached against Nick Saban's defense a lot and has a unique style in that stadium, would give him a good game. But, this is a team that has lost a lot of players at one position, and as great a coach as, Nick Saban is, I mean, when you lose talent over more and more talent at one position, it affects you. They will get healthy. They're holding Mika Fitzpatrick out this week to make sure he's healthy for the Iron Bowl. They will get healthy, but I don't know if this year's team is a vintage defensively as I've seen some of their championships. They do not dominate the defensive line the way they have in past championships. They also have been hurt at edge rushers because of injury. So I just don't see this team as dominating. I think they're a threat. You might even call them the prohibitive favored, but I don't think they're as dominating as they've been in the past. And I think the top layer of football teams, if they play a good game against them, can beat them. They might not beat them, but I think they can beat them.
And I can tell you this, and you're doubleheaded this week. The first game's Arkansas and Miss State, and that game will be closer than people think it's going to be because it will be impossible for Miss State off that game they played Saturday night to have a lot in the tank against even a bad Arkansas team at Arkansas. That will be a very tough. I know Arkansas is not any good, but that will be a tough game for them, for Mississippi State to play.
Well, the main talking points in our conference this year, of course, at the top. What Auburn's controlling their fate of getting back in there, especially after the upset of Georgia. Georgia, rebuilding back to get there in that championship game. Can they beat Kentucky and Georgia Tech to get there with only one loss? I think the main topic around this conference this week has been who gets the Florida job and who gets the Tennessee job. It has been nonstop in this conference.
Well, it sounds like, I've heard Kelly's name, but there's also a real push for Strong to get the job, huh?
Well, I think Scott Frost's name is in the middle of this thing, too, at Central Florida. He's undefeated with his football team. He's got a great background of being a coach at Oklahoma. He's fresh, innovative, got a great offense. I think he is in the mix. Not sure about Tennessee where they're headed yet. They flew into Tampa to talk to John Gruden. I don't know if John takes that job or not, but
I don't think he does. I don't think he does.
And the change at athletic director at Arkansas, there's also the possibility that Brett Bielema could be finished at Arkansas. So now there's another change. There is the hot rumor that Gus Malzahn, who grew up his coaching career in Arkansas, could be flopping and going. Can you imagine him, beating Alabama, winning the SEC championship, and then switching schools? I mean, there is just so much talk in this conference in the midst of this playoff. So who do you
think, now you know this more than anybody, you think Florida will go to Frost? Is that what you think?
That's my prediction. I've been on that
who
for a while.
And who goes to Tennessee?
I can't get a handle on Tennessee. That's a tough one. I don't know, Chad Morris, SMU, Mike Norvell from Memphis. I don't know if that's a big enough splash for them, but I think.
How long before somebody reaches in for the craziness of Lane Kiffin?
Well, Lane's doing a good job.
Doing a very good job.
I think everybody's going to want to see him do it one more year.
You wish he didn't do the stuff he does, like tweak everybody all the time, including his ex-coaches and everything else. I mean, because that's what keeps him from getting jobs, is the stuff he does,
Yeah, and that is part of it,
That's part of him.
He has some personal issues that, didn't play well at Alabama,
yep.
and it didn't end well. I wish he could have finished that thing off last year. I still, to this day, I've known Steve Sarkisian forever, and I still to this day believe that if Lane would have been able to last one more week there, they would have won the national championship a year ago.
Yeah, I tell you, it hasn't gone well for Sarkisian. It hasn't gone well for him in Atlanta either.
He had a good week last week, though. I watched that
finally.
game.
Yeah, but
yes, he did.
Yeah, finally.
So,
all right, listen, we'll talk next week. Thanks, Gary.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, Gary Danielson on college football. So not a great week of games this week, and Notre Dame tries to get healthy against Navy. Be careful. That's a hard team to play. You're down. You got embarrassed last week. Now you got to play Navy. Not an easy game to play. Navy drives you nuts. Now, they can't stop anybody when they're on that level. They can't stop the other teams. But they can score on them, and they'll try to keep the ball, and they'll keep it 4 downs and try to keep it forever, and they'll go on every 4th down they can, and they'll play them a crazy game. They really will. That's the way Navy plays. Back after.